and welcome back to Friday Reads, where we help you find your next read. I'm Jill.
And I'm Julie, and today we're sitting in the library in front of the book club to go section. We've got multiple copies of several selections, and Jill and I will be featuring some of those. And so if you have a smaller book club and you need multiple copies of a book, stop in and we may have some options for you. So Jill, what's your first pick?
So my first one is on my reading list, actually, Solito. So if you're going to start a book club and choose this book, you should ask me to join because I need to read it.
Me too.
Solito by Javier Zamora. My trip. My parents started using that word about a year ago. One day you'll make a trip to be with us, like an adventure. Javier'S Adventure is a 3,000-mile journey from his small town in El Salvador, through Guatemala and Mexico, and across the U.S. border. He will leave behind his beloved aunt and grandparents to reunite with a mother who left 4 years ago and a father he barely remembers. Traveling alone except for a group of strangers and a coyote hired to lead them to safety, Javier's trip is supposed to last 2 short weeks. At 9 years old, all Javier can imagine is rushing into his parents' arms, snuggling in bed between them, living under the same roof again. He does not see the perilous boat trips, relentless desert treks, pointed guns, arrests, and deceptions that await him, nor can he know that those 2 weeks will expand into 2 life-altering months alongside a group of strangers who will come to encircle him like an unexpected family. So this was published in September 6th, 2022, and it is got several copies here on our book club selection.
Both of our lists to read. My first pick, just the cover of this book just breaks my heart. Sold on a Monday by Christina McMorris. This was published back in 2018. 2 children for sale. The scrawled sign peddling young siblings on a farmhouse porch captures the desperation sweeping the country in 1931. It's an era of breadlines, bank runs, and impossible choices. For struggling reporter Ellis Reed, the gut-wrenching scene evokes memories of his family's dark past. He snaps a photograph of the children not meant for publication, but when the image leads to his big break, the consequences are devastating in ways he never imagined. Haunted by secrets of her own, Secretary Lillian Palmer sees more in the picture than a good story and is soon drawn into the fray. Together, the two set out to right a wrongdoing and mend a fractured family at the risk of everything they value. Inspired by an actual newspaper photo that stunned readers across the nation, this touching novel explores the tale within the frame and behind the lens, a journey of ambition, love, and the far-reaching effects of our actions. So, sold on a Monday. You can see the back of the book has 2 children for sale sign.
My next pick, if you want to have a classic in your collection, we have 1984 by George Orwell, which was published in 1949 and continues to be like a very spooky in how it predicts things. 1984 is a dystopian social science fiction novel with a cautionary tale by George Orwell. It centers on the consequences of totalitarianism, mass surveillance, and repressive regimented of people and behaviors within society. The story takes place in an imagined future of an unknown year believed to be 1984. Then much of the world is in perpetual war. Great Britain, now known as Airstrip 1, has become a province of the totalitarian superstate Oceania, which is led by Big Brother, a dictatorial leader supported by an intense cult of personality manufactured by the party's thought police. Through the Ministry of Truth, the party engages in omnipresent government surveillance, historical negationism, and constant propaganda to persecute individuality and independent thinking. The protagonist, Winston Smith, is a diligent mid-level worker at the Ministry of Truth who secretly hates the party and dreams of rebellion. Smith keeps a forbidden diary. He begins a relationship with a colleague, Julia, and they learn about a shadowy resistance groups called the Brotherhood. So you can follow his tale and discuss it with your book club.
Probably one I should go back and read. I don't think I've ever read that one, high school or whatever.
I read it a few years ago, and it was very spooky how it seems like it's now.
My second pick I have read. It's When the Apricots Bloom by Gina Wilkinson. This was published back in 2021. In this moving, suspenseful debut novel, 3 courageous women confront the complexities of trust, friendship, motherhood, and betrayal under the rule of a ruthless dictator and his brutal secret police. Former foreign correspondent, the author draws on her own experiences to take readers inside a haunting story of Iraq at the turn of the millennium and the impossible choices faced by families under a deadly regime. At night, in Huda's fragrant garden, a breeze sweeps in from the desert, encircling Baghdad. rustling the leaves of her apricot trees and carrying warning of visitors at her gate. Huda, a secretary at the Australian Embassy, lives in fear of the secret police. That secret police who watch and listen for any scrap of information that can be used against America and its allies. They have ordered her to befriend Allie Wilson, the deputy ambassador's wife. Huda has no wish to be an informant, but fears for her teenage son who may be forced to join a deadly militia. Nor does she know that Allie has dangerous secrets of her own. Huda's former friend, Rania, enjoys a privileged upbringing as the daughter of a sheik. Now her family's wealth is gone, and she too is battling to keep her child safe and a roof over their heads. As the women's lives intersect, their hidden pasts spill into the present. Facing possible betrayal at every turn, all three must trust in a fragile, newfound loyalty, even as they discover how much they are willing to sacrifice to protect their families. So I read this. I like this one a lot. I like the relationship between the women and what they were having to go through.
My next one was a book club pick here at the Kimberly Library. We have a book club. It's called The Personal Librarian by Mary Benedict and Victoria Christopher Murray. It's the remarkable little-known story of Bella Lacosta Green, J.P. Morgan's personal librarian, who became one of the most powerful women in New York despite the dangerous secrets she kept in order to make her dreams come true. From the New York Times bestselling author Marie Benedict and acclaimed author Victoria Christopher Murray. In her 20s, Bella Lacosta Green is hired by J.P. Morgan to curate a collection of rare manuscripts, books, and artwork for his newly built Pierpont Morgan Library. Belle becomes a fixture in the New York society scene and one of the most powerful people in the art and book world, known for her impeccable taste and shrewd negotiating for critical works as she helps build a world-class collection. But Belle has a secret, one she must protect at all costs. She was born not Bella Lacosta Green, but Belle Marion Greener. She is the daughter of Richard Greener, the first black graduate of Harvard and well-known advocate for equality. Belle's complexion isn't dark because of her alleged Portuguese heritage that lets her pass as white. Her complexion is dark because she's African American. The Personal Librarian tells the story of an extraordinary woman, famous for her intellect, style, and wit, and shares the lengths to which she must go for the protection of her family and her legacy to preserve her carefully crafted white identity in the racist world that she lives in. So, Personal Librarian, published in 2021.
I read that one too. I like that one too. My third pick's also a debut novel. And this is The Sweetness of Water by Nathan Harris. This was published in 2021. In the spirit of the known world in the Underground Railroad, this novel comes and it depicts an unlikely bond between two freed men who are brothers and the Georgia farmer whose alliance will alter their lives and his forever. So in the waning days of the Civil War, brothers Prentice and Landry, freed by the Emancipation Proclamation, seek refuge on the homestead of George Walker and his wife Isabel. The Walkers, racked by the loss of their only son to the war, hire the brothers to work their farm, hoping through an unexpected friendship to stanch their grief. Prentice and Landry, meanwhile, plan to save money for the journey north and a chance to reunite with their mother, who was sold away when they were boys. Parallel to their story runs a forbidden romance between two Confederate soldiers. The young men, recently returned from the war to the town of Old Ox, hold their trysts in the woods. But when their secret is discovered, the resulting chaos unleashes convulsive repercussions on the entire community. In the aftermath of so much turmoil, it is Isabel who emerges as an unlikely leader, proffering a healing vision for the land and for the newly free citizens of Old Ox. With candor and sympathy, this debut novel creates an unforgettable cast of characters depicting Georgia in the violent crucible of Reconstruction. The author has created equal parts beauty and terror, and this book is described as gripping as it is moving. The Sweetness of Water is an epic whose grandeur locates humanity and love amid the harrowing circumstances. So, sounds like there's a lot going on.
A lot to talk about in that book.
I have not read this one, but this one sounds like there would be a great discussion coming out of it.
That sounds it. So this next one, I think you should have on your book club list, just because it takes place in Wisconsin. It's The Family Chow by Lan Samantha Chang. The residents of Haven, Wisconsin have dined on the Fine Chow's restaurant's delicious Americanized Chinese food for 35 years, happy to ignore any unsavory whispers about the family owners. But when brash, charismatic, and tyrannical patriarch Liu Chao is found dead, presumed murdered, his sons discover they've drawn the exacting gaze of the entire town. The ensuing trial brings to light potential motives for all three brothers: Dagu, the restaurant's reckless head chef; Ming, financially successful but personally tortured; and the youngest, gentle but lost college student James. So this was published in 2022, and I think it'd make a great book club pick.
My fourth pick is one of my favorite William Kent Krieger books, and this is Ordinary Grace. This was published 10 years ago already, back in 2013. So, and I think I've talked about this one before, but it's also in our book club to go section. So, that was it. That was all of it. A grace so ordinary there was no reason at all to remember it. Yet I have never across the 40 years since it was spoken forgotten a single word. New Bremen, Minnesota, 1961. The Twins were playing their debut season. Ice-cold root beers were selling out at the soda counter of Halderson's drugstore, and hot stuff comic books, not familiar with those, were a mainstay on every barbershop magazine rack. It was a time of innocence and hope for a country with a new young president. But for 13-year-old Frank, it was a grim summer in which death visited frequently and assumed many forms: accident, nature, suicide, murder. Frank begins the season preoccupied with the concerns of any teenage boy, but when tragedy unexpectedly strikes his family, which includes his Methodist minister father, his passionate artistic mother, Juilliard-bound older sister, and wise beyond his years kid brother, he finds himself thrust into an adult world of secrets, lies, adultery, and betrayal. This book is told from Frank's perspective 40 years after that fateful summer. Ordinary Grace is a brilliantly moving account of a boy standing at the door of his young manhood, trying to understand a world that seems to be falling apart around him. It's an unforgettable novel about discovering the terrible price of wisdom and the enduring grace of God. So, Ordinary Grace. That's it. One of my favorite Kent Krieger books.
I like that author. Well, you've probably heard of this book and heard of this author because she's very popular, and I don't think I've ever met a person who does not like this book. The Four Winds by Kristen Hanna, which was published in 2021, and we have a lot of copies here for you. Texas, 1934, millions are out of work, and a drought has broken the Great Plains. Farmers are fighting to keep their land and their livelihoods as the crops are failing. The water is drying up, and dust threatens to bury them all. One of the darkest periods of the Great Depression, the Dust Bowl era, has arrived with a vengeance. In this uncertain and dangerous time, Elsa Martinelli, like so many of her neighbors, must make an agonizing choice: fight for the land she loves or go west to California in search of a better life. The Four Winds is an indelible portrait of America and the American dream as seen through the eyes of one woman whose courage and sacrifice will become to define a generation. So, yeah, your book club will be happy if you pick this one because everybody would like it. And if they don't, well.
Loved it. Love that one. My last pick I have not read either, nor have I read her previous book, Hamnet, but this is The Marriage Portrait by Maggie O'Farrell, which was published in 2022. So, Florence, the 1550s, Lucrezia, third daughter of the Grand Duke, is comfortable with her obscure place in the palazzo, free to wander at its treasures, observe its clandestine workings, and devote herself to her own artistic pursuits. But when her older sister dies on the eve of her wedding to the ruler of Ferrara, Modena, and Reggio, if I'm pronouncing those correctly, Lucrezia is thrust unwittingly into the limelight. The Duke is quick to request her hand in marriage, and her father just as quick to accept on her behalf. Having barely left girlhood behind, she must now enter an unfamiliar court whose customs are opaque and where her arrival is not universally welcomed. Perhaps most mystifying of all is her new husband himself, Alfonso. Is he the playful sophisticate he appeared to be before their wedding? Is he happiest in the company of artists and musicians? Or is he the ruthless politician before whom even his formidable sisters seem to tremble? So there's a lot going on with him. As she sits in constricting finery for a painting intended to preserve her image for centuries to come, one thing becomes worryingly clear. In the court's eyes, she has one duty: to provide the heir who will shore up the future of the Farnese dynasty. Until then, for all of her rank and nobility, the new duchess's future hangs entirely in the balance. It's full of beauty and emotion, with which she illuminated the Shakespearean canvas of Hamlet. Did you read that one, Jill?
No.
I haven't either. This author turns her talents to Renaissance Italy in an extraordinary portrait of a resilient young woman's battle for her very survival. Certainly sounds like her life takes a quick flip.
Wow.
So, the marriage portrait.
So we hope we helped you find something for your book club if you want to start a book club. We have you covered here at the Kimberly Library.
Yeah, you can find these books if you know where our magazines are. They're on the back side of the magazine rack facing our new book collection. So we hope you check something out if you have a small group and you need multiple copies. Find our videos on Facebook and YouTube, and we are in our last week of the summer reading program. Yeah. Friday, August 5th will be the last day to turn in any of your reading sheets, so we hope you had a lot of fun with us. We're both in our Camp Read Some More t-shirts this week, so we thank you for watching. Till next time. Bye-bye. Bye.